When most people think of the Colosseum, they picture roaring crowds, gladiators clashing under the sun, and the emperor's hand deciding the fate of men. But few imagine what lay beneath the grand arena, a hidden labyrinth of tunnels, chambers, and forgotten mechanisms that once powered the bloodiest spectacle of the ancient world. For centuries, the Colosseum's underground was sealed, left to decay beneath the weight of history. Tourists walked across the arena floor, unaware that just a few meters below their feet, an entire world once existed, alive with noise, movement, and death. They called it the hypogeum, meaning the underworld. It was a place where men waited to die, where wild beasts were caged in the dark, and where intricate systems of pulleys and elevators lifted terror itself into the light. But the story of the hypogeum is not just one of engineering genius, it's also a tale of mystery, because beneath Rome's most famous monument, archaeologists have found more than just the remnants of Roman technology. They've found tunnels that seem to lead beyond the Colosseum, into the unknown. In the late 1800s, the first serious excavations began under the arena. Archaeologists expected to find simple storage rooms and animal cages. What they found instead shocked them: a complex two-story network of passageways stretching nearly the entire circumference of the arena. There were wooden elevators operated by slaves, trapdoors that could open without warning, and huge winches used to lift animals and fighters into the arena. The Romans had built a machine, a living stage, capable of transforming reality before the crowd's eyes. Imagine the sound, the groan of pulleys, the roar of lions echoing in the dark, the clank of metal gates as the next spectacle prepared to unfold. Above, 50,000 Romans cheered, oblivious to the suffering beneath their feet. Yet the deeper the archaeologists dug, the stranger it became. Some tunnels didn't match the Colosseum's design. They were older, carved from rough stone, leading away from the main structure. And no one could explain why they existed. Were they earlier construction passages? Or did the Colosseum's builders deliberately connect to something already there? When modern researchers re-entered the hypogeum in the 20th century, they found that parts of these lower tunnels extended beyond the amphitheater's known footprint. Some even appeared to connect to older Roman drainage systems, or perhaps something much more ancient. The Romans were masters of building upon the past. Many of their structures stand on top of earlier Etruscan or even pre-Roman foundations. Some historians now wonder if the Colosseum itself was placed atop an older sacred site, one that had long been associated with blood, ritual, and the underworld. What if the Colosseum's architects weren't just engineers, but also priests of spectacle, continuing a tradition far older than Rome itself? Beneath the arena floor, excavators found strange markings carved into the stone walls, symbols that did not match any known Roman pattern. They appeared more primitive, almost ritualistic. And in one chamber, a small altar-like platform was uncovered, its purpose still unknown. Could this have been used for sacrifices or offerings before the games began? Or did it date back even earlier, to a time when the site served a completely different purpose? As restoration teams mapped every corridor of the hypogeum, they realized something else. The entire underground was designed with astonishing precision. Air flowed naturally through the tunnels, preventing suffocation from torch smoke. Water channels were carved for drainage, but also, perhaps, for something else. Because certain sections of the hypogeum seem to align with ancient Roman aqueduct lines. And according to some early maps, these channels may have connected the Colosseum's underworld with other parts of Rome, even as far as the Forum or the Palatine Hill. Imagine walking through those tunnels today. The air is cool and damp. The faint smell of earth and rust lingers in the silence. The flicker of a torch reveals faint inscriptions left by those who once worked or died here. The hypogeum is no longer a place of blood. It's a time capsule, perfectly preserved. Every stone whispers of something that once was, and of something that still might be hidden. Because to this day, some areas remain unexcavated. Parts of the hypogeum were deliberately sealed with brick and mortar centuries ago. Roman records mention maintenance tunnels and catacombs in the area, but no one has ever fully explored where they lead. Could it be that beneath the Colosseum lies more than we've ever imagined? A forgotten layer of Rome itself? For centuries, the hypogeum beneath the Colosseum remained sealed, its secrets buried under layers of earth and silence. When archaeologists finally began to excavate in earnest during the late 20th century, they expected to find the remnants of trapdoors, lifts, and animal cages, the machinery of Rome's brutal entertainment. Instead, What they uncovered hinted at something far more mysterious. Beneath the arena's central corridors, workers discovered a narrow shaft leading deeper underground, one that wasn't part of the original Flavian blueprint. It seemed to descend into an older layer of construction built from a different type of stone, far rougher than Roman brickwork. The team believed they had found a forgotten maintenance tunnel, but as they cleared away centuries of debris, the shaft opened into a passage that stretched much farther than expected. It ran directly away from the Colosseum. The walls were uneven and ancient. The mortar looked primitive, almost pre-Roman. Some parts even bore chisel marks suggesting hand-cut limestone blocks, similar to those used by the Etruscans long before Rome's founding. The air grew colder, thicker, the smell of earth and minerals more distinct. For a few brief moments, the archaeologists wondered if they had just stumbled into a natural cave. But then they found evidence that humans had worked here. A series of niches carved into the stone, spaced evenly apart, suggested places where oil lamps once stood. The passage curved slightly and then widened into a small chamber. On one wall, etched faintly into the rock, was a symbol, a circle with 3 lines radiating from its center. It did not match any known Roman motif. Who built this tunnel, and why had it been sealed so carefully? In the decades since that discovery, Italian archaeologists have mapped much of the Colosseum's substructure. Yet several passages remain unexplored, their entrances blocked by collapsed masonry. Some led toward the ruins of the Domus Aurea, Emperor Nero's fabled Golden House. Others appear to head toward the Forum and possibly beyond. Historians have debated their purpose for years. Some argue that they were part of a logistical network, allowing slaves and workers to move between the Colosseum and nearby buildings unseen. Others suspect something more symbolic, that the tunnels were part of an initiatory path, a ceremonial route used by gladiators or priests before entering the arena. In ancient Roman religion, the underworld was sacred, a place of purification, death, and rebirth. To descend beneath the earth was to face one's mortality. The gladiator, walking through those torchlit corridors, was not merely preparing for combat. He was symbolically descending into Hades itself. That symbolism becomes even stronger when we consider how the hypogeum's architecture mirrored the mythological world. The lower level represented Tartarus, the realm of punishment and chaos. The arena above, bathed in sunlight, represented the mortal world, and the stands above that, filled with citizens and emperors, were the domain of the gods. It was theater, yes, but also ritual, a cosmic reenactment of life, death, and divinity. As archaeologists traced the tunnels outward, they began to notice something strange. The alignment of the Colosseum's underground corridors corresponded closely with ancient Roman drainage systems. But some of these channels were far older than the Colosseum itself. One particular section, running toward the northeast, seemed to connect to a larger subterranean route that predated Emperor Vespasian's reign. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed cavities and voids extending beyond the expected perimeter, in patterns inconsistent with Roman engineering. These tunnels might not have been Roman at all. A few daring researchers proposed that Rome's amphitheater had been built atop an earlier network, perhaps part of an ancient Etruscan necropolis. After all, before the Colosseum, this area had been a lake, Nero's artificial lake, drained to make room for the amphitheater. But ancient texts describe an even earlier time when the valley was sacred, a place of burial and ritual long before the empire. The possibility that the Colosseum stands atop a necropolis adds a chilling new dimension. The crowds who cheered above would have done so over the resting places of the dead. The arena itself may have been the latest layer in a continuum of worship, transforming sacrifice from spiritual to spectacular. Recent discoveries support this theory. In 2018, during maintenance work, archaeologists uncovered fragments of pottery and bones beneath the hypogeum, some dating to centuries before the Colosseum's construction. Carbon dating placed them in the late Republic, or even earlier. Among the finds was a small terracotta figurine depicting a hooded figure, likely an early chthonic deity associated with the earth and the afterlife. To most, these would be curiosities. But to historians who study the evolution of sacred Roman topography, it was proof of continuity. The Colosseum wasn't just entertainment, it was built upon a spiritual inheritance. If true, then the hidden tunnels might once have served a very different purpose, not as a mechanical system for gladiators, but as a sacred passage connecting the world of the living with that of the dead. And here's where the mystery deepens further. Some of the unexcavated tunnels extend toward an area once known as the Ludus Magnus, the main gladiator school. But others appear to head toward a zone where recent surveys have detected additional voids, deeper chambers that may still be sealed. Could those unexplored spaces hold traces of an older civilization, one that predated Rome itself? The deeper we follow the tunnels extending from beneath the Colosseum, the clearer it becomes. Rome was not merely a city of marble and columns, but of layers, each generation built upon the bones of the last, leaving behind a labyrinth beneath the streets where time itself seems to blur. When archaeologists began tracing the Colosseum's outer hypogeum tunnels in the early 2000s, they soon realized they were not isolated. The passageways aligned with other ancient structures across the city, the remains of aqueducts, catacombs, and forgotten temples, as though all were part of an enormous hidden system designed to channel both water and people beneath Rome. The Romans had long used subterranean engineering for aqueducts and drainage, but this network appeared to serve multiple purposes. Some shafts were too narrow for maintenance and too steep for transport, yet they bore clear signs of human modification, and many led directly toward known religious sites, the Temple of Venus and Rome, the Basilica of San Clemente, and the Forum itself. It was as if the Colosseum's hypogeum was not an isolated innovation, but rather a continuation of an underground tradition, one rooted in ritual, secrecy, and power. In the dim tunnels of Rome, the air feels older. There are places where water drips slowly from ceilings carved 2,000 years ago, where walls bear Latin graffiti left by early Christians hiding from persecution. But deeper still, beyond the catacombs and burial niches, there are levels no one was meant to reach. Ancient records describe how entire neighborhoods were once undermined by cuniculi, secret passageways and drains dating back to Etruscan times. These cuniculi ran beneath temples, villas, and even streets, connecting the city's most sacred and political centers. Over time, many were incorporated into Rome's expanding urban fabric, buried, forgotten, then rediscovered centuries later. When researchers used modern scanning technology beneath the Colosseum and its surroundings, they found patterns matching these ancient cuniculi. In one survey, radar detected a large cavity approximately 20 meters below the surface, directly beneath the northeast wall of the amphitheater. It was too deep to be part of the known hypogeum, and too symmetrical to be natural. No excavation has yet reached it, but speculation runs wild. Some scholars believe it could be part of Nero's lost golden house, a tunnel linking his palace to the arena. Others propose it's an older Etruscan vault, possibly a tomb complex sealed when the Flavian dynasty reclaimed the land. Whatever it is, it reminds us of one thing. Beneath Rome's surface lies a second city, silent and eternal, as vast and complex as the one above. When you walk through modern Rome, you might not realize how much of it rests on ancient ruins. Every church hides a pagan temple beneath its foundation. Every street runs over Roman stones, which in turn lie over Etruscan foundations. Archaeologists call it the vertical city, a civilization built on the accumulated layers of its own past. But these underground spaces were not just reused, they were repurposed. Over the centuries, they transformed from temples to tombs, from tombs to sanctuaries, from sanctuaries to sewers. Each layer absorbed the memory of the one before. The Colosseum's tunnels, then, were not a singular invention of Roman engineering. They were the continuation of a philosophy, the belief that power flows from what lies beneath. The emperors who presided over the games understood this intuitively. The spectacle above was sustained by the machinery below, both literal and symbolic. The underworld was the foundation upon which Rome's grandeur stood. During modern excavations of the Colosseum area, archaeologists discovered that some of the deepest tunnels seemed to converge toward a point beneath the Oppian Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome. There, ancient sources record the existence of subterranean shrines dedicated to chthonic gods, Hades, Pluto, and Dis Pater. These deities ruled over the underworld, associated with both death and wealth, for all treasures they believed came from the earth. Coins, pottery, and inscriptions found in these lower layers often carry motifs of serpents, gateways, and the words Via Inferna, the road to the underworld. It's possible that the Colosseum's hypogeum was intentionally aligned with these sacred roots, symbolically linking the emperor's spectacle with the divine order below. Some historians suggest that the descent of gladiators through the hypogeum mirrored the descent of souls into the afterlife, and their emergence into the arena symbolized rebirth, even if only momentary. The games thus became a ritualized reflection of Rome's cosmology. death below, glory above. In recent years, explorers have used 3D imaging to virtually reconstruct these hidden layers. What they've discovered is astonishing. Beneath the Colosseum and surrounding area lies a complex resembling a honeycomb of history. Aqueducts interwoven with catacombs, old vaults joined to newer ones, pagan shrines buried beneath Christian crypts. Each structure, each layer, tells a fragment of the same story, that Rome's power, both spiritual and political, was drawn from its command of the earth beneath it. And yet parts of this system remain untouched. Beneath certain areas, particularly to the north and east of the Colosseum, anomalies persist on ground-penetrating scans. Hollow spaces, unexplained alignments, sealed corridors. Some archaeologists believe these could be remnants of a much older subterranean complex, perhaps even a pre-Roman settlement buried under centuries of construction. Whatever lies there, it remains hidden, its story waiting in silence. Long before Rome rose from its 7 hills, another civilization ruled the Italian heartland, the Etruscans. Their cities stood where modern Tuscany now lies, but their influence reached far beyond. They taught early Romans how to build arches, how to drain marshes, and perhaps how to harness the power of the earth itself. The Etruscans were obsessed with the underworld. They called it Aita, a realm not of endless torment but of mystery and transformation. Death, to them, was not the end. It was a passage. And to honor that passage, they carved entire worlds underground. Centuries before the Colosseum, the Etruscans hollowed out the hillsides of Cerveteri, Tarquinia, and Veii, creating necropolises, cities of the dead. These weren't mere tombs. They were intricate, multi-room homes for the departed, complete with carved furniture, painted walls, and altars for ritual. The dead, they believed, lived on beneath the surface in an inverted reflection of life above. When you walk through an Etruscan tomb, you sense the familiarity, the arched ceilings, the orderly chambers, the corridors that feel less like graves and more like corridors of a temple. It's no wonder that centuries later, Rome's greatest monument, the Colosseum, would carry echoes of that design in its own underground labyrinth. The connection between the Etruscans and the Colosseum's hypogeum isn't obvious at first glance, but look deeper, and the similarities start to emerge. The Etruscans mastered subterranean architecture long before the Romans. They built complex drainage systems, tunneled aqueducts, and hollowed massive cisterns in solid rock. Their underground craftsmanship was unmatched in the ancient world. Roman historians like Livy and Varro wrote that the first kings of Rome, including Tarquinius Priscus and Tarquinius Superbus, were Etruscan. These rulers oversaw some of the earliest monumental projects in Rome, the Cloaca Maxima, the city's massive underground sewer, and the Temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline Hill. Both were feats of Etruscan engineering. The Cloaca Maxima itself was more than a sewer. It was a statement that the city would control nature, drain chaos, and build civilization on top of the wild. And just like the Colosseum centuries later, it symbolized Rome's domination over both man and earth. But what if the Etruscans didn't just inspire Roman engineering? What if they also passed down their spiritual understanding of what lies below? Archaeologists have long noted the Etruscans' fascination with the underworld. Their art depicts gates leading into darkness, guarded by hybrid creatures and winged demons. In their mythology, heroes descended into these shadowed lands, seeking wisdom or rebirth. This imagery persisted into Roman culture. When gladiators descended into the Colosseum's hypogeum, they weren't merely walking into an arena. They were reenacting a sacred descent. The architecture itself, layered and symbolic, mirrored the structure of the Etruscan afterlife. And so the Colosseum's underworld might be seen as the final expression of an ancient Etruscan idea, that the power of a civilization comes from mastering the realms below. In recent excavations around Rome, archaeologists have uncovered physical traces that reinforce this link. Beneath the Palatine Hill, they discovered Etruscan-style tunnels and chambers dating to the 6th century BCE, centuries before the Colosseum. These passageways were cut deep into the tufa rock, their walls blackened by torches long extinguished. In one chamber, an altar was found carved directly into the floor with channels likely meant for liquid offerings. The discovery suggests that early Romans performed rituals underground, possibly honoring the gods of the deep, ancestors of Pluto, Dispater, and Hades. What's more, the layout of some of these tunnels corresponds closely to the Colosseum's later hypogeum. It's as if the Romans took inspiration directly from the sacred underground complexes of their predecessors. Modern engineers studying the Colosseum have marveled at its precision. The tunnels and lifts worked seamlessly, the drainage systems prevented flooding, and ventilation shafts kept the air moving even during long performances. But beneath that functionality lies an older rhythm, one inherited from those who believed the earth itself was divine. To the Etruscans, entering the underworld was an act of reverence. To the Romans, it became an act of control. What began as a sacred descent into mystery evolved into a spectacle of domination, over beasts, over men, and over death itself. Perhaps that's why the Colosseum's underworld feels haunted even now. It was built not only with stone and mortar, but with an ancient idea, that the realm below is where true power resides. There are whispers among historians that some parts of the Colosseum's deepest structure were never Roman at all. The rough stonework found beneath the hypogeum's foundations may well be Etruscan, predating the amphitheater by hundreds of years. If so, the Colosseum stands not just as Rome's monument, but as the Etruscans' tomb, a living memorial to the civilization that taught Rome how to build its underworld. By the 3rd century, the Roman Empire had changed. The old gods still lingered in temples and altars, but something new was spreading quietly, an underground faith, both literally and spiritually. Christianity had begun to move beneath the surface of Rome, finding shelter in the same dark corridors, once reserved for sacrifice and spectacle. The transition wasn't sudden. It happened slowly, in the shadows, as persecuted believers sought safety where the eyes of the empire could not reach. And so the underworld of Rome, built by the Etruscans, expanded by the Romans, drenched in centuries of ritual, became the cradle of a new religion. The catacombs stretched for miles beyond the city walls, vast labyrinths carved into soft volcanic stone. In their silence, Christians buried their dead, carved prayers into the walls, and held secret ceremonies by the dim glow of oil lamps. These weren't just graves, they were sanctuaries of hope. In some ways, the catacombs echoed the Etruscan necropolises of old, subterranean cities for the departed. But here the tone was different. Where the Etruscans celebrated death as continuation, the Christians saw it as resurrection. Life below became the promise of life above. Archaeologists have long noticed the parallels between these sacred spaces. The early Christian catacombs reused ancient tunnels, some of which may have originally served pagan or even Etruscan functions. In a few locations, the layers overlap, Christian frescoes painted directly over older pagan symbols, the new faith literally growing out of the old. The Colosseum itself, once the stage of death, became a place of transformation. By the 4th century, when Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity, the amphitheater's glory had faded. Earthquakes damaged its structure, and parts of the hypogeum were filled in with rubble. Yet, legend claims that early Christians viewed the Colosseum as hallowed ground, consecrated by the blood of martyrs. Whether or not large-scale executions of Christians truly occurred there is still debated, but the symbolism endures. The underworld of the Colosseum, once the domain of beasts and machinery, now became, in imagination at least, a symbol of faith's endurance beneath tyranny. As Christianity rose, many pagan temples fell, but rather than destroying the old entirely, the new religion often repurposed it. Churches were built atop ancient shrines, and the tunnels below them became crypts. The Basilica of San Clemente, for example, stands just a short walk from the Colosseum, and beneath it lies an extraordinary vertical timeline of faith. The upper church dates from the 12th century. Beneath it, a 4th century basilica. Beneath that, a 1st century Roman house that once served as a secret Christian gathering place. And beneath that, an even older Mithraeum, a temple dedicated to the god Mithras, whose followers worshipped in darkness, reenacting a ritual death and rebirth. The pattern is unmistakable. Rome's faiths evolved by absorbing what came before. Each age layered its beliefs on the ruins of the last, never truly erasing them. The same earth that held the gladiators' blood now held the bones of saints. Even as the Colosseum decayed, its underworld remained strangely alive. Pilgrims visited believing they walked the same ground as the martyrs. Medieval monks recorded visions of light emanating from beneath the ruins as if the ancient chambers themselves had become sacred. In time, the Colosseum stones were taken to build churches and palaces, but the underground, the hypogeum, was left mostly untouched, sealed off, and forgotten. It's almost as if Rome understood that disturbing what lay below risked awakening something ancient. Some historians even suggest that the preservation of the hypogeum may have been deliberate, a quiet act of reverence or perhaps fear. The Romans had always known that power came from beneath, whether from the gods of the underworld or the faiths that thrived in the dark. And so, as centuries passed, Rome's identity inverted. What was once a theater of death became a monument of resurrection. The tunnels that echoed with the cries of slaves now resonated with prayers. The underworld once feared became the foundation of salvation. But there is one more layer to this story, one that brings us back to mystery. In the late 20th century, as archaeologists mapped the Colosseum's substructure, they discovered sealed sections whose origins couldn't be identified. The construction techniques didn't match Roman methods or medieval repairs. The stonework appeared ancient, even older than the amphitheater itself. Beneath the Colosseum's northern arch, a blocked passage led to a small chamber carved directly into the bedrock. Inside were fragments of pottery, animal bones, and a single bronze coin from the Republic era. But most puzzling of all was a carved relief of a man holding a torch, descending into the earth. Was it Etruscan, early Roman, or perhaps a relic of the very first builders who saw this ground as sacred? No one can say for certain, but its presence feels deliberate, a marker left by those who understood what the site truly was, a gateway between worlds. In the 21st century, as Rome's surface teems with tourists and traffic, something extraordinary is happening below it. For the first time in nearly 2 millennia, scientists and archaeologists are beginning to truly see what lies beneath the Colosseum, not through shovels and picks, but through light, radar, and digital reconstruction. It began with a question: how much of ancient Rome still sleeps below our feet? When restoration teams started clearing the Colosseum's lower levels in the early 2000s, they expected collapsed corridors and stagnant water. What they found instead was a remarkably preserved system, more intricate, more massive, and more mysterious than anyone imagined. The Colosseum's hypogeum, its underground network, spans over 6 acres of corridors, chambers, and shafts. Built around 80 CE, it once held elevators, trapdoors, cages, and tunnels that powered the spectacles above. But after centuries of floods, earthquakes, and neglect, much of it was buried in silt. Now, with 3D laser scanning, ground-penetrating radar, and digital mapping, archaeologists can reconstruct the hypogeum in astonishing detail. What they're finding challenges even the boldest theories. Some of the deepest sections, those carved directly into the tufa rock, don't match the architectural style of the Flavian era. Their rough-cut walls and irregular vaults resemble pre-Roman construction techniques, leading some to suspect they were reused from an older, possibly Etruscan or early Italic structure. In essence, the Colosseum may have been built on top of an already ancient underground network. One of the most significant modern discoveries came from an Italian research team in 2019. Using radar imaging beneath the northeast quadrant, they detected a hidden chamber, rectangular, about 6 meters long, sealed by centuries of sediment. When small probes were lowered inside, cameras revealed traces of wall plaster, soot marks, and, most intriguingly, fragments of amphorae and animal bones. The find puzzled experts. Why would remains of ritual offerings lie beneath an amphitheater? A few scholars drew connections to older Roman practices, the mundus ceremonies where priests opened a symbolic pit to the underworld, offering food and wine to spirits of the dead. Others saw echoes of Etruscan ritual where sacrifices were buried under new construction to consecrate the ground. If true, it means that when the Colosseum was built, the Romans might have performed rites to honor or pacify whatever forces lay below. In 2021, another breakthrough came when drones equipped with LiDAR technology mapped previously inaccessible corridors. The scans revealed something remarkable: subterranean alignments. The Colosseum's tunnels appear to line up with nearby ancient structures: the Ludus Magnus, the Gladiator School, the Temple of Venus and Rome, and parts of the Forum. To the untrained eye, it might seem coincidence. But the precision of these alignments suggests planning, an interconnected system where movement, sound, and even air were channeled intentionally. Researchers believe this network could have functioned as a hidden infrastructure, carrying water, materials, and people, or as a symbolic map mirroring Rome's cosmology, connecting the domains of gods, emperors, and death. Perhaps the most haunting discovery came during a restoration in 2018, when workers cleaning a lower vault found a patch of blackened stone beneath layers of mineral buildup. When tested, the residue contained traces of animal fat and olive oil, substances used in ancient Roman torch rituals. Nearby, scratched faintly into the wall, was a Latin inscription, Lux de subterra, light from below. Was it the mark of a worker, a priest, or a prisoner? No one knows, but its meaning resonates deeply. For 2,000 years, the Colosseum's underground has been a place where light and darkness, life and death, power and faith collided. Today, visitors can walk parts of the hypogeum again, illuminated by carefully placed lights that cast long, haunting shadows across its arches. Guides describe the lifts that once raised lions and tigers, the pulleys that made gods appear from the ground, and the corridors where condemned men took their final breath before stepping into eternity. Yet, even as the public marvels at the spectacle, archaeologists continue to probe deeper. Beneath the known hypogeum lie unexplored chambers, visible only through radar anomalies. Some are far older than the amphitheater, their purpose still a mystery. Dr. Federica Rinaldi, the site's lead archaeologist, once remarked, "Every time we believe we have reached the foundation, we discover there is another Rome below it." It's a statement that could apply to the entire city, a place where history is not layered in time, but intertwined in space. Modern science is confirming what ancient myth already knew. The underworld of Rome was not just metaphor. It was real, built stone by hands that understood the symbolic power of descent. The Colosseum's tunnels are more than relics of engineering. They are a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest urge to explore what lies beneath, to seek control over death, and to find meaning in the shadows. And as modern archaeologists shine light into these depths, they're uncovering not just ruins, but the essence of Rome itself. A civilization that rose from the earth, ruled the world, and left behind an underworld as enduring as its legend. Even after 2,000 years, the Colosseum refuses to give up all its secrets. Beneath its crumbling arches and sunlit corridors, the underworld of Rome still breathes. You can feel it in the damp air, hear it in the faint echo of your footsteps, sense it in the silence that lingers too long between sounds. The deeper you go, the more it feels as though the city is alive, watching, remembering. Every civilization leaves traces above the earth, but Rome did something different. It built downwards. It created worlds beneath itself, layers of power, ritual, and memory. From the Etruscans carving tombs into hillsides, to the Romans constructing the hypogeum, to the Christians praying in the catacombs, the story of Rome is one of descent and rebirth. The Colosseum's underworld embodies that cycle perfectly. What began as a stage for death evolved into a symbol of endurance. The stones that once absorbed the blood of gladiators now stand as monuments to human ingenuity. And yet, for all our knowledge, the deeper meaning of what lies below remains elusive. Modern Rome stands on a foundation that few truly understand. Beneath the hotels and cafes, below the traffic and the crowds, exists a second city, an inverted reflection of the one above. Archaeologists estimate there are over 300 miles of tunnels beneath the capital, many uncharted. Some date back to the Republic, others to the Etruscans, and a few perhaps to civilizations we no longer remember. This unseen Rome connects everything: temples, baths, villas, and even the Colosseum. Pipes, aqueducts, and forgotten corridors intertwine like veins. And deep within, there are passages that lead nowhere, as if built for purposes lost to time. Some end abruptly in stone walls, others spiral downward, their destinations erased by centuries of collapse. When explorers enter these hidden layers, they often describe an uncanny stillness, as if sound itself hesitates to linger. The temperature drops, the air thickens, and torches reveal carvings that no one has recorded. Some of these marks are geometric, some symbolic, others are simple handprints pressed into the wet stone long ago. A fleeting reminder that human hands, not gods, shape these depths. In 2023, a new study using high-frequency radar imaging revealed anomalies beneath the Colosseum, voids lower than the known hypogeum. They appear circular, perfectly symmetrical, like chambers carved with intent. No excavation has yet reached them. The risk of collapse is too great. But speculation runs wild. Could these hidden cavities predate the amphitheater itself? Some archaeologists think so. They may have been part of an older ritual site, later integrated into the Colosseum's foundation. If that's true, it means the Romans didn't simply choose the site at random. They built their greatest monument atop a place already considered sacred, or perhaps cursed. It's a haunting thought that the Colosseum, the heart of Rome's spectacle, stands upon the bones of an older faith, one that understood the earth as alive. The Romans conquered it, the Christians sanctified it, and now, in our time, we analyze it, but we still don't fully understand it. Perhaps that's the true legacy of the Colosseum's underworld, not as a relic of engineering, but as a mirror of humanity's endless search for meaning beneath the surface. Every era believes it knows the truth, yet every discovery opens another question. The more we uncover, the deeper the mystery grows. When you walk through the hypogeum today, surrounded by lighted paths and safety rails, it's easy to forget what this place once was. But if you close your eyes for a moment, the modern world fades. You can almost hear the pulleys creak, the chains rattle, the crowd roar above. You can sense the fear, the courage, the ritual. The gladiators who waited in those shadows knew something we've forgotten, that the underworld wasn't just below them, it was within them. It represented the struggle between life and death, man and fate. And in that struggle, Rome found its strength. The Colosseum story is not finished. Every few years, a new discovery shifts what we know. A tunnel rediscovered, a wall uncovered, a tool unearthed. Each fragment adds a sentence to the grand story of the city, yet none complete it. Because maybe that's the point. The underworld of Rome was never meant to be fully known. It was meant to remind us that mystery itself is sacred, that every civilization, no matter how powerful, eventually becomes another layer beneath someone else's feet. In the end, the Colosseum's underworld is more than stone and history. It's a message left for us by those who came before, a whisper from the past that says you can build empires above the earth, but their roots will always reach into the dark. And perhaps that's where the true Rome still lives, not in the sunlight, but in the quiet, breathing depths below.